Chapter 1: The Ones We Lose First. Dr. Elena Marsh had worked at the Harrow Institute for 16 years, and she still couldn't sleep the night before a sample rotation. She lay in her bunk in the staff quarters, 12 feet below ground. Concrete walls painted the particular shade of institutional green that someone in 1974 had apparently believed was calming, and stared at the ceiling and ran through the protocol in her head the way other people counted sheep. Primary containment check. Secondary seal verification. Full biometric log of everyone entering sublevel 4. She'd done it 231 times. She knew this because she kept a log, a small green notebook in her desk drawer with a tally mark for every rotation, and the number had stopped feeling large somewhere around 150 and had started feeling like a countdown instead. Toward what, she didn't let herself think. Outside her door, the institute breathed its quiet institutional breath. The hum of the air recyclers, the distant clank of the service elevator, the footsteps of the night security rotation. She knew the schedule by heart, knew every sound this place made. After 16 years, it had become her body's second skeleton, the facility's rhythms mapped onto her own the way a long marriage maps two people's sleeping habits onto each other. She thought about her sister in Bozeman, who had called 3 days ago and asked when Elena was coming for Christmas. Soon, Elena had said, "I'll try." The same thing she'd said for 4 years running. She got up at 5:15 and went to work. The Harrow Institute sat 8 miles outside of Dillon's Creek, Montana, in a shallow valley between two unremarkable ridgelines. From the county road, it looked like an agricultural research station. Low buildings, chain-link fencing, a gravel lot with government-adjacent trucks parked in neat rows. The sign at the gate said Harrow Agricultural Sciences, which was the kind of lie that didn't bother trying too hard. Nobody in Dillon's Creek asked questions. The institute employed 43 people from the surrounding area in surface-level positions, maintenance, security perimeter, kitchen staff, and paid well enough that asking questions seemed like bad economics. What was below ground was something else entirely. The Harrow Institute was older than the CDC, older than FEMA, older than most of the government acronyms that people assumed handled things like this. It had been founded in 1931 by a consortium of scientists and industrialists who had collectively decided that certain things the world occasionally produced needed to be found, secured, and kept away from everyone else, indefinitely, without political oversight or public accountability. They had been operating on that principle for 93 years. They had, as far as Elena knew, a perfect record. As far as she knew. Sublevel 4 housed 6 containment units. 5 of them held things Elena had made her peace with: viral agents, bacterial samples, 3 chemical compounds that didn't have names outside of Harrow's internal classification system. The 6th unit held the sample they called 8. She had never seen 8 outside of its triple-sealed container. Nobody at Harrow had, not in the 11 years since it had been transferred from a decommissioned facility in Norway. What she knew about it she knew from the documentation. Dry, clinical language that somehow failed to flatten the horror beneath it. A prion variant of unknown origin. Infectious via fluid contact. Incubation period of 6 to 12 hours. The infected host died, cardiac and respiratory failure, and then, after an interval that varied between 2 and 4 hours, the body reanimated. That was the word the documentation used, reanimated, as though it were a technical term with a precise meaning, which she supposed it was. The reanimated host retained no cognitive function, no memory, no personality. What remained was the body's hunger, amplified, singular, inexhaustible, and the prion, which was looking for new hosts with the patient efficiency of something that had been doing this for longer than human civilization. Elena had spent 11 years making sure that never happened. The rotation team that morning was 4 people. Elena, as lead containment specialist, Dr. Yusuf Adami, her second, a soft-spoken Bosnian American who had joined Harrow 8 years ago and had the particular quality of stillness that very smart people sometimes develop around very dangerous things. Technician First Class Rhonda Park, who had done 40-something rotations and approached each one with the cheerful professionalism of someone defusing bombs for a living. And Owen Greer knew, 6 months in, first rotation on sublevel 4. She had argued against bringing Owen. Director Calloway had overruled her. He has to learn sometime, Calloway had said, which was true and also irrelevant, because the question was not whether Owen had to learn but whether today was the day. She had looked at Calloway across his desk and thought about saying he's not ready and had said instead understood, which was the answer Calloway wanted and the answer that kept her in the room where decisions were made. Owen was 26. He had a photograph of a golden retriever on his locker. They suited up in the prep room off sublevel 4's main corridor, full containment gear, 2 layers, every seal checked by the person beside you and then checked again. This was the protocol. You did not skip the double check. You did not assume. Elena went through Owen's seals herself, methodically, the way she'd go through her own, and when she was done she looked at his face through the visor and said, "How are you feeling?" "Good," he said. "Ready. If anything feels wrong at any point, you say so immediately. Not after, not when we're finished. Immediately." "Understood." Owen, she waited until he was looking at her. "There is no such thing as a small problem down here. There is no such thing as probably fine. You feel a suit irregularity. You hear something unexpected. You notice anything that isn't in the protocol. You say it out loud. That's your only job today." He nodded. He was trying to look calm. He was mostly succeeding. She turned to the corridor and led them in. The rotation took 40 minutes. It should have taken 35. The extra 5 minutes were Owen's fault, though not in a way she could have predicted or prepared for. He was fine during the primary check, thorough, methodical, following her lead correctly. He was fine during the secondary seal verification of Units 1 through 5. It was at Unit 6 that something in his body chemistry apparently decided it was done cooperating, and he fainted. Not dramatically. He didn't cry out or fall hard. He simply sat down against the corridor wall with a sound like a slow exhale, his knees folding, and then he was sitting there looking up at them through his visor with an expression of profound embarrassment. "I'm sorry," he said. I'm sorry." "Stay where you are," Elena said. She crouched in front of him and checked his vitals through the suit's monitoring panel. Heart rate elevated but not dangerous, blood pressure low, vasovagal. She'd seen it before, more times than she'd expected when she first started, the body deciding it had absorbed enough threat and simply shutting down briefly to process it. "Breathe slowly. You're not hurt." "I know I'm not hurt," he said. "I'm mortified is what I am." Yusuf made a sound that might have been a laugh. "First rotation on 4. He said. "You lasted longer than I did." "You fainted on your first rotation?" "I threw up," Yusuf said. "In my suit. Elena still reminds me." "I will remind you until one of us dies," Elena said, and checked Owen's vitals again, and then stood and turned back to Unit 6. She completed the seal verification. Everything read nominal. The triple containment system showed green across all indicators. Pressure differential holding. No irregularities in the biometric log. 8 sat in its container in the dark of the containment chamber, and did what it always did, which was nothing visible. Prion didn't move. They didn't respond to light or sound or the presence of potential hosts. They simply waited, with the patience of things that did not experience time. She noted the completion in her log and turned back to her team. Rhonda was helping Owen to his feet. Yusuf was running the final corridor check on his tablet. Everything was fine. Everything was exactly as it should be. Then Rhonda said, "Huh," in a tone that Elena had never heard from her in 40-something rotations, and Elena looked at the seal indicator above Unit 6's outer door, and the indicator was yellow. Yellow meant query, not red, which meant breach. Yellow meant the system had detected something worth examining. Elena had seen yellow before. Power fluctuations, sensor drift, A calibration error in 2019 that had taken 3 hours to diagnose and turned out to be a loose wire. Yellow was not red. She ran the query protocol. The system came back with a pressure differential reading, a variation of 0.3 millibars between the outer and middle containment chambers, within acceptable parameters, probably sensor drift. She flagged it for the maintenance team, noted it in the log, and made the decision she would spend the rest of her life with. She cleared the yellow. The maintenance team found the hairline fracture in the middle chamber's inner seal at 11:40 that morning. By then, technician Rhonda Park had been dead for 2 hours. It had happened in the decontamination corridor, during the post-rotation shower cycle. Standard procedure, 15 minutes, full chemical rinse. Rhonda had been through it hundreds of times. What the fracture had done was introduce a 0.3 millibar pressure differential, and what that differential had done, over the course of 40 minutes, was push a volume of air no larger than a breath through the outer seal of the containment unit, into the corridor, into the atmosphere of sublevel 4. An amount so small it was almost theoretical. Almost. Rhonda had shown symptoms at 9:15, a headache, which she mentioned to Yusuf with the casual tone of someone noting the weather. By 10 she was running a fever. By 10:30 she was in the medical bay, and the medical bay was in lockdown, and Elena was standing outside the door looking through the reinforced glass at her colleague of 8 years lying on the examination table. And Elena already knew. She had known since the fever reading. She called Director Calloway at 10:40 and said the words she had spent 16 years training for and praying she would never say. Calloway was quiet for a moment after she finished. Then he said, "Full sublevel lockdown. Nobody leaves." Then he said, "God help us," which Elena had never heard him say before. Then he hung up. Rhonda died at 11:22. Her heart stopped, then her breathing. Dr. Adamy, who had been monitoring her vitals from outside the sealed medical bay, noted the time in his log with steady hands that Elena suspected were not as steady as they looked. The room was quiet for 1 minute and 40 seconds, Elena counted. Then Rhonda sat up. She did not look like Rhonda anymore. The face was Rhonda's face. Elena could catalog the features, the short dark hair, the small scar above her left eyebrow from a cycling accident she described once at a staff dinner. But the face wasn't doing Rhonda things. It was doing something else. The eyes were open and they were focused, but focused the way an animal's eyes focus, on movement and proximity and nothing else. The mouth was open. The sound coming from it was low and constant, a vibration more than a vocalization, something Elena felt in her sternum through the reinforced glass. Rhonda stood up and walked to the door and put both hands against it and pushed. The door held. It was rated for 800 pounds of pressure, and it held. Elena turned away from the glass. Yusuf was beside her, and Owen behind him, and all three of them were in their suits because she'd ordered suits the moment Rhonda's fever crossed 103, and that decision, unlike the one at the yellow indicator, was one she would not have to live with. "Okay," Elena said. Her voice was steady. She had trained for this. "We run the outbreak protocol. Sublevel 4 is sealed. We move everyone from the surface to sublevel 2. "The fracture," Yusuf said. "I know. If the fracture extended to the outer seal during the rotation." "I know, Yusuf." She looked at him. "We have to assume surface exposure is possible. That's why we move everyone to sublevel 2 and we assess from there." "And if surface exposure already happened?" She held his gaze. "Then we contain what we can." She reached for her radio and raised Director Calloway's office and got no answer. She tried the surface security station and got no answer. She tried the main operations room. On the fourth try, someone picked up. It was a security guard named Pete Salas, who had worked perimeter for 6 years and who had, last Christmas party, made everyone laugh doing impressions of Calloway's walk. His breathing on the radio was wrong. "Pete," she said. "Pete, I need you to tell me your status." Dr. Marsh. His voice was strange, flattened, the effect drained out of it. Something's wrong up here. Some of the staff. There. A sound that was not Pete's voice, somewhere behind him. Then Pete said, "Oh God," and the radio went to static. Elena stood in the corridor of sublevel 4 for a moment with the static in her hand. Then she said, "We go up," and she started moving. Sublevel 2 was not chaos the way Elena had trained for chaos. She had trained for panic, people running, shouting, making noise that could be managed and redirected. What she found when the stairwell door opened was something quieter, and therefore worse. The corridor lights were on, half of them. The other half had blown or been broken, and the pattern of light and dark made the hallway look longer than it was, the shadows between the working fixtures deep enough to hide things. The supply room door to her left was barricaded from the inside. She could see the chair wedged under the handle, and from behind it came the sound of someone crying, muffled and exhausted, the crying of a person who has been doing it for a long time. To her right the hallway bent toward the kitchen, and from that direction came the vibration. Low, below language, the same sound Rhonda had made through the glass but multiplied now, layered, more than one source. She held up her fist, and the three of them stopped. She counted the sources. 3, maybe 4. She didn't go toward the kitchen. She went to the supply room door and knocked twice, the signal she'd drilled with the surface staff 3 years ago at a mandatory emergency response training that most people had treated as a box-checking exercise. She hadn't. She knocked twice and waited and knocked twice again. The chair scraped back. The door opened 2 inches and then I looked at her through the gap. "Dr. Marsh," a woman's voice. Tanya Reeves from maintenance, 23 years at Harrow. "Oh thank God. Oh thank God." "How many in there?" 6. There were 8. Garrett and Posada went to get help an hour ago. A pause. They didn't come back. Elena looked at Yusuf. He looked back at her. Neither of them said what the math meant. "We're going up," Elena said through the gap. "Emergency exit. Maintenance passage on the eastern wall. Single file, no noise. You stay between me and Dr. Adamy at all times. Do you understand?" "Yes." "Open the door." There were 8 of them moving through sublevel 2's eastern corridor. Elena and Yusuf and Owen and the 6 from the supply room, when they heard the first one behind them. It was close. That was the thing that hit her first. Not the sound itself, but the proximity of it. The vibration rolling up the corridor from no more than 30 feet back, which meant it had come out of a room they'd already passed. She didn't look back. She kept moving and kept her voice flat and said, "Faster, don't run." Not running was the right call. Running made noise and noise attracted more of them, and the corridor ahead still had 2 turns before the maintenance passage entrance, and she needed everyone's attention on their feet and the path, not on what was behind them. She could hear it back there. One set of footsteps, slow and even, not hurrying, the unhurried pursuit of something that didn't tire. The maintenance passage entrance was a steel door set into the eastern wall, painted the same institutional green as everything else, distinguished only by a small yellow sign that said authorized personnel. She had the keycard. She swiped it, and the lock disengaged, and she pulled the door, and held it, and pushed people through with her free hand, counting as they went. Yusuf, Owen, Tanya, the others, one by one. Behind her the footsteps turned the corner. She looked back. It had been Garrett from maintenance. She recognized the Harrow issue coveralls, the steel-toed boots she'd seen him wearing at the morning check-in 3 hours ago. Garrett had been 51 years old. He'd shown her pictures of his granddaughter at the last staff meeting. What was wearing Garrett's body now was coming at a walking pace, and its face was doing the wrong things, and its hands were open, and its mouth was open, and the sound was coming from all the way down in its chest. The last of the 6 went through the door. Elena went through after them and pulled it shut and heard the magnetic lock engage and stood in the maintenance passage with her back against the door and felt the impact of a body hitting the other side. The door held. The pounding started, slow and rhythmic, and she turned away from it and led her people into the dark. The maintenance passage ran along the eastern wall of the facility for 200 feet before angling north toward the access hatch. It was narrow, 2 people abreast at most, pipes running overhead, the floor uneven in places where the concrete had shifted. Owen had his flashlight up, which gave them a cone of yellow light and made everything outside the cone impenetrable. Elena moved fast. The pounding on the door behind them faded with distance but did not stop. They were 40 feet from the angle in the passage when Tanya said sharply, "Something's ahead." Elena stopped. She held up her fist. In the dark ahead, at the edge of Owen's flashlight beam, something was standing. It was blocking the passage completely, a big man, broad, the width of the corridor. It took her a moment to resolve the shape into someone she knew, and when she did, her chest tightened. Dale Posada, one of the 2 who'd gone for help an hour ago. He'd been the largest man on the surface staff, 6'4" and 240, and whatever he was now filled the passage the way a wall fills a doorway. He was looking directly at the flashlight beam. His eyes were open inside it, and he was not blinking. Elena had the fire suppression canister from the sub-level 2 corridor. She'd pulled it from the wall bracket when they passed it. The same instinct she always had in emergencies. Grab what's available. You'll know what it's for later. She knew what it was for now. The canister was 3 feet long and solid steel and weighed 12 pounds. "Yusuf," she said quietly, "get everyone behind you." "Elena, behind you, now." She walked toward Posada. He moved when she was 15 feet away. Not the slow walk from before, but something faster, a lurch, the body throwing itself forward without the usual negotiations between intention and muscle. She sidestepped left into the pipes and he caught her shoulder, and she hit the wall, and the impact rattled through her collarbone, and she swung the canister backhanded into the side of his head before he could reorient. The sound it made was terrible. She had never hit a person with something metal before, and the sound was nothing like she would have imagined, dense and wrong. He went down. He started getting up. She hit him again, overhead this time, driving down with everything she had, and he went down again, and this time the getting up was slower, the body reassessing, and she hit him a 3rd time and he stopped. He didn't stop moving entirely. His hands were still working on the floor, the fingers spreading and closing. She stepped over him and looked back at her people and said, "Come on," and kept her voice steady, and they came. Owen was last over the body. She saw him look down at it, and then look away very fast, the way you look away from something you don't want to carry with you, and she understood the impulse and knew it wouldn't work. Some things you carry whether you want to or not. The angle in the passage brought them north, and the access hatch was visible ahead, a square of slightly less dark at the end of the corridor, the hatch itself hanging open, someone having come through it in the other direction at some point. Cold air was pushing down through it. Elena could smell the outside. November air, pine and frost, the particular cleanness of Montana cold. They were 10 feet from the ladder when the sound started behind them again. Not one source this time. 2, maybe 3, filtering in from somewhere. A branch passage she hadn't accounted for. A service corridor connecting to this one in the dark. She didn't look back. She got Tanya onto the ladder first, then the others in rapid succession. One hand on each person's back, pushing them up and onto the rungs. Counting up instead of down now. Counting toward 11 instead of toward 0. Owen went up 7th. Yusuf went up 8th. Elena put her foot on the first rung and felt a hand close around her ankle. The grip was extraordinary. Not painful, not in the way a person grips. It was mechanical, the closing of something that had learned grip as a function rather than a sensation. She looked down. One of the maintenance staff, a woman whose name she was trying to remember and couldn't, both hands locked around Elena's ankle, the face turned up and the sound vibrating up through the grip into Elena's boot and her foot and her leg. She kicked. Once hard, the way you kick when you need the result immediately. The grip didn't loosen. She kicked again and grabbed the rung above and pulled with everything in her arms and felt something in her shoulder protest loudly, and then the grip broke. Not because she'd freed herself, but because the thing holding her had lost its footing on the passage floor, had gone down, and the angle had changed enough that the hand slipped from her boot. She went up the ladder fast. She came out through the hatch into Montana air and rolled onto the frost-hard grass and lay there for 3 seconds looking up at a sky that was blue and enormous and real. Then she got up. The Montana air hit her face like cold water. The sky was the hard blue of a November morning, and it was beautiful in the way that things are beautiful when you're not sure how many more times you'll see them. She looked back at the facility. Smoke was rising from the eastern wing. She could hear, faintly, from somewhere inside, that sound. She counted the survivors around her. 11. 11 out of 43. Then she counted again, because she needed to be sure. 11. Her shoulder was screaming. She didn't mention it. She looked at the county road, 8 miles to town, and she looked at the trucks in the parking lot, 3 of them, keys in the lockbox by the gate. "Listen to me," she said to the 11 people around her. "I need you to listen carefully, because I'm only going to say this once." They listened. She told them everything. To be continued.